Hello, people of the earth. I'd like to say some things about gold. The value of gold has increased dramatically over recent years. We're always told that in troubled times and in unstable economies, gold is the best place to have your money. First of all, what do you mean exactly by stability? Relative to what? The economy is never stable. The economy is merely a market where the different commodities have a higher or lower value based upon higher or lower demand at different times and circumstances, and this affects the buyers and sellers of said commodities in ways which increase or decrease their prosperity, respectively. Got it? Good. So, because we're told that gold is the best place to have your money, apparently many people are trying to buy as much gold as they can afford during a time when the value of gold is higher than it's ever been. The thing is, the people selling the gold are dependent on a high demand for gold. Thus, it is important to them to convince you that the economy is in big trouble. Make you believe the dollar is unstable, and therefore you should be buying gold, preferably from them. You're told this by guys like Peter Schiff, who's appearing on all kinds of TV and radio shows lately, especially Glenn Beck and Neil Cavuto. Neil Cavuto seems to take him with a grain of salt and try to argue with him, doubting his words, whereas Glenn Beck seems to be biting hook, line, and sinker, as if he was the authority on the economy. They practically give him the opportunity to turn the interview into an infomercial. And by his comments, which seem to be designed to alarm the viewer, you hear the dollar's in the crapper, and the crapper's worth its weight in gold. You should buy more gold with your less valuable dollars. You believe him and Glenn Beck because you think they're smarter than you. Hell, they're on TV. And you're not. Michael Savage is always advertising 1-800-BUY-COIN. Bill O'Reilly is always advertising for Blanchard and Associates. My belief that the price of gold is due in no small part to these men. Their income is determined by advertising revenue. The advertising revenue is determined by the effectiveness of the advertisements. Bill O'Reilly says buy gold. Lots of people buy gold from his sponsor. Bill stays on the air. It seems to be working because they've been advertising the same gold sellers for years. If this were not so, the advertisers would have moved on to find a more effective approach. Glenn Beck, Bill O'Reilly, Michael Savage, among others, are gaining radio stations all the time, and this is because their advertising works. They gain access to new markets, to new stations, and their syndicate spread. So they have something to gain by the rising price of gold. It's a ruse, man. It's a gimmick. It's a hustle. These gold sellers are exploiting the fact that the media is sending home the message with almost unstoppable force that the economy is going down, and their primary reason for doing so is because the liberal media, which is the majority of the media, do not want to see another Republican president in November of 2008. But they say that the primary reason the economy is going down is because of housing foreclosures. There is really only a slight increase in housing foreclosures as opposed to any other time, and the slight increase in housing foreclosures is brought about by the fact that people bought a house when property values were peaked, and in the next wave of home buyers did not want to pay that peak value, and so the values started to level off and drop in order to make the price more inviting to the buyer. Meanwhile, the seller still had to pay the mortgage based on the peak value of the house. You know, as I think about it, it occurs to me that it would not have mattered at what point the values of homes would have peaked and leveled and dropped. For example, in Florida, the values of homes nearly tripled over a short period of years. Well, what if they had only doubled? You know what? We'd still be in the same situation we are now. Wherever the increase stops and the value drops, that's where you're going to have a lot of people bailing out and panicking, foreclosing, because they feel like they're losing money or not making as much as they would have hoped to make. This trend, this cycle, this phenomenon is the same thing that happens in the stock market all the time, every day, and also in the commodities market and in the price of gold. People hear there's money to be made in a certain stock or commodity or in real estate, and they see many others doing it, and they think, well, I can do that. So they do. Only by that time it's too late. Stock or commodity has already had a surge upwards, and those who bought the stock at the bottom of its value when owning it was not cool, now comes the time for them to take profits. So they sell. And who can blame them? Should they hold on to their stock or commodity or real estate and then ride it all the way back down? Hell no. The people who sell gold have been holding it for a long time, and now they want their money. So they begin to sell off some. Not all. Just as Jim Cramer would say, just schnitzel off some of the top. So they keep coming up with reasons that the value is going up in the near future so that people keep buying. If you did not buy it, they would not be able to sell it. It's, you know, another thing Jim Cramer says. Sold to you. Just like your house. If you bought a house and lived in it, and, you know, damn near paid it off, and now you want to sell it, then you should not have much of a problem doing so, even at this time, because even if you can't get what it was worth 6 months or a year ago at the peak value, that's probably still more than you paid for it. But if you bought a house in the last couple of years, thinking that you were going to flip it real quick, well, you're probably disappointed right now. Hell, you might even have foreclosed. But this is what happens to speculators every day in all sorts of markets, especially the stock market. Only, you know, stock buyers and speculators, they don't whine and cry about it because they knew the risks going in. I guess most homeowners are less experienced than that, and they don't know anything about markets, and they just assumed that prices would constantly be going up all the time, never dropping. But, you know, that's how most people have to learn about the economy the hard way, by losing some money. That's how you gain experience. And the guys in the gold market are trying to prevent the bottom dropping out on them. They really don't care what happens to you, but they want to make sure it goes up for a while so that they can sell their cheap gold. They bought it cheap. They want to sell it high. You know, buy low, sell high. And with their access to the media, who love bad news. No news is good news. You know, if it bleeds, it leads. They can sell their wares to you. Buyer beware.